Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Secretary Duffy, when we met, we talked about Chicago and aspects of Illinois that I'm representing and concerned about. And Chicago, of course, is the rail hub of North America, more track radiating in more directions than any other city, 25% of all freight trains, 50% of all intermodal trains go through that city, and we need help. We talked about commitments that have been made, work that is being done, it's all good. But the next aspect of it is the continuation of a grant, a $93 million grant, which for some reason has been held up. So I'll ask you to please have your staff put it on the list and try to figure out what we can do to get this moving forward. It is critical for efficient train operation in our country. Are you familiar with it?
So not specifically, Senator. I know that we have approved 13 grant agreements over the last several months for $270 million. When we came into office, there were 89 awards without grant agreements. So we're moving through the backlog in your state, but the backlog is real in Illinois.
Good.
But by the way, I am aware of listen, there's a lot of infrastructure. Again, you have the Great Lakes, you have rail, you are a central hub, especially in Chicago. I know that in Wisconsin, we do appreciate your support of the Packers. we know you're a fan.
Take those words down. Let me raise another issue. With all the time that I spend on airplanes, millions of miles, not as much as Brian Schatz, but close to it, you come to really appreciate not only the pilots, the professional crew, but certainly the flight attendants and the important work that they are engaged in. And so I found it kind of interesting recently when I observed that there is a growing trend on the planes that I fly on. After the safety announcements, after we are all seatbelts on, then the advertising of credit cards and frequent flyer programs begins. And you wonder why, of all the things that they could talk about, and I wish most of the time they talked about none of it, why would they pick that? Well, it's because, sadly, some of the major airlines make more money on their credit cards and frequent flyer programs than on air operations. I didn't believe that until I saw it in print. It's a fact. And you have to ask yourself, who is at least making sure that the passenger gets fair treatment in the frequent flyer programs? I've introduced legislation to do that. So we could work together, I hope, and make certain that there's honesty in terms of dealing with these frequent flyer miles. They mean an awful lot to many people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, Senator, there's going to be a lot of things we agree on. That is one we will not agree on. When I was in the House, I was on the opposite side of this issue than you were. I do think a lot of people in America aren't able to afford a trip. They oftentimes will use their points, whether it's for a hotel or for an airline ticket. And I think that's a value for folks. What I would support, though, is I think that, if there's, and we're seeing this more and more, if there's an extra fee that you want to charge for using a credit card with merchants, I think that's appropriate. So there's the consumer's paying for the cost of the card.
This is a separate issue. Senator Marshall and I are keeping this separate.
You are okay.
What we're trying to
do. What is this issue is?
We're trying to make sure that when they say that you have so many points and it equals so many benefits that you can use on that airline, that there be disclosures so the customer knows when they change the rules. Right now.
So I'd like to learn more about that. I'm very astute at. I think I have a credit card for all the airlines, and I know which ones are better than others, and all hotels too. I guess I would love to partner with you and look at what you're considering on the transparency side.
Just to make sure there's fairness to the passengers and disclosures if there are changes in policy.
I'm all about transparency and fairness.
On the other issue, I've given up on you long ago. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Bozeman.
Let me just, and you don't have to respond to this, but I also want to express my thoughts also about how important the essential air service is and the contract towers. I know you know that coming from the part of the country that you represented. Also, I know that you understand that the most recent census revealed that more than half of the counties across the nation saw a population decline. In Arkansas, 53 of our 75 counties experienced the same, about 53% nationwide. While rural America's population is declining, its infrastructure remains just as vital in our interconnected communities. As urban and suburban projects are often given priority and rural bases are shrinking, how can we ensure that rural infrastructure gets the necessary support that it needs?
Well, I think it's that you have to pay attention to it. You have to understand it, and it's having people from rural America fight for it. I think that's critical. And I come from rural America. On the discretionary grants, and there's tools and help that's offered to smaller communities to try to access additional resources. But it goes to the point that this has become so complicated. What we're working on, and hopefully we can do it, is how can we make this process simpler? So you just can't be a big institution that can apply and access competitive money. It's accessible for smaller communities where resources truly are just as needed.
And I'm glad you bring that up. That was really my next question. We see this a lot in USDA grants and things. We're in a situation now where these, the ability to apply is so complex, so complicated. You're talking about spending thousands of dollars for grant writers. And again, the bigger communities can do that. That's simply something that we've got to concentrate on and across government, particularly I think with transportation, USDA, those kind of grants, because it does make it very, very difficult for our smaller communities, really for anybody, in order to access those grants. And that's not a cost driver, that's a cost saver.
And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I do think if you with the expansion of high-speed internet, and after and during COVID, you saw a lot of people who want to move to rural America. They actually like it. It's a beautiful place, and so maybe we're going to see those numbers change. But with that, you need the infrastructure to go along with it. Right. Again, I think it's been interesting to see how people have gone back to the rural part of this country.
There's been a lot of bipartisan support in Congress to modernize how we plan, build, and maintain infrastructure with emerging technologies, from advanced digital construction management systems to automated inspection tools like drones, remote sensing. These innovations can help address workforce shortages, improve project delivery times, and enhance safety across our transportation network. How do you envision the department accelerating the adoption of digital technologies across all modes of transportation?
I think that we are sometimes we're thought of as hard hats and light reflecting vests. I think we're in the most innovative space in government. Whether it is autonomous vehicles and drones and these eVTOLs, also with the technology that can be deployed in construction. So I am in favor of exploring all options that can reduce our costs, increase safety. And so if you have ideas on things that I should be looking at, I'm happy to do that. But I do think we are at the cusp of a technological revolution in regard to the way that people move and the way that our products move in this country, which is, again, I mean, we have to get it right. You can't go too fast with some of this stuff, but you can't go too slow either. And so getting the right pace on the rules and regulations is going to be critical for the department over the course of the next 3.5 years.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
The problem is
Senator
time. Right?
Schatz.
We are about 4 months into this, or a little less than 4 months into this, and there are a bunch of things that are just like plainly not climate, right? Evacuation routes, like hillside stabilization. And so my more basic question is, I know you care about metrics. I know your team is trying to metabolize all of these. What's the throughput capacity of the department to get these 3,200 grants reviewed and obligated and out? Is it 300 a month? I mean, excuse me, 300 a week? Do you think you're going to be done by June? What's the time frame? Because it's a little bit of a black box. This is information. This hearing is useful because it gives us some reassurance that they're not actually stopped. But I think it's fair for our state departments of transportation to kind of know it's going to be June before it's done, it's going to be next week, it could be later this year. Can you give us a sense for timing?
So I appreciate the question, and I think that's a really good question. So that I've told you we've done over 400. At this pace, which I'm proud of the pace that we have done thus far, it is not fast enough. If again, this is gonna take us multiple years at this pace to get it done. So that is unacceptable. And I have countless meetings every week about how we can speed up the process to get more money out the door, more grant agreements done. So I take your point. I'm proud of the work we've done so far, but the mission is to pick it up dramatically.
Yeah, and at some point you run into a potential, even if it's inadvertent, you run into an impoundment issue, right? You have to spend these dollars, and especially since the grant awards were given and the state departments of transportation, sometimes county departments of transportation, they have to spend money to gear up for contract management. You've got staging costs, so this is not free to do. So I just really do encourage you not just to pick up the pace as a sort of generic proposition, but to get back to members of the House and the Senate on a bipartisan basis to say, you know, this is where we're going to get and by when. So speaking of which, I want to cover one other thing in the kind of, I call it de-wokeifying the stuff.
Can I just, on the impound, like, I'm not trying to impound anything.
I know you're not.
I'm trying, so if there's money that's about to run out, I'm trying to move that, I'm trying to elevate that and move that more quickly so you don't lose dollars.
Sure, and you and I had a brief conversation about bikes.
Yes.
Okay? And then the department issued additional guidance on bike infrastructure. And this is like I don't even ride a bike particularly often, but I just think it's a little nuts that bikes have become some sort of like climate priority, and therefore people who are right of center are like, bikes are a climate thing. Bicycles are bicycles. Everybody rides a bike. Kids ride bikes, families ride bikes. Every community, rural, red, purple, blue, you know, should have a safe way for people to ride bikes. Can we please take the question of utilizing bikes safely out of whatever fight we're going to have on a partisan basis about climate policy?
So I don't see bikes and climate together, but I like bikes too. Bikes are wonderful. My kids ride them.
Okay, can you review the additional sort of restrictions or scrutiny that some of these bike projects have gotten?
So can I explain my concern about if there was some of the requirements in the last administration was, are you adding, you know, bike lanes and walking paths to, you know, your construction project? Like, that's what they wanted to see. And if there's some places across this country where we don't need bike lanes, why are we adding bike lanes onto what should be, you know, just roadways?
No one wants to ride a bike.
Right.
Yeah,
But
hold on. Because I am out of time, and there's a vote and some other members who want to talk. But the problem here, right, is everybody understands how this was done, which is you have so many thousands of contracts. People controlled F for certain words. And so some bike projects are just bike projects. Some projects are adding criteria to a rail or pedestrian or car project to say, and also there's this new requirement. But it's such a blunt instrument that you're blocking stuff that I think you and I, on a common sense basis, would say, yes, we should do it. And I just want one more question, which I'll get out and take for the record. But again, on timeframes, and let's get some specificity. You got to do a bunch of things to upgrade the air traffic control system, including and especially the telecommunications upgrades. If you could give us both some fidelity on costs, what you anticipate asking the Congress for, and also specifically the time frame for resolving the Newark issues, whether that's weeks or months or whatever. I just think the traveling public needs to know exactly what that's going to be. Thank you.
If you want to call, I'd be happy to talk more about bikes. I don't think we're that far away on bike and bike usage.
I don't think we are. I just think in the execution of some of these procedures that we're talking past each other.
Very well. Thank you.
Senator Van Hollen.
Now let me turn to an area of disagreement. On Monday, Maryland joined 19 other states to sue you in your capacity as Secretary of Transportation and DOT for what they describe as illegally withholding or threatening to withhold critical transportation funds to try to require those states to enforce federal immigration law. Mr. Secretary, I don't want to get into the merits of this right now. I think that I think the states will prevail. I think that's an inappropriate use of your effort to leverage transportation funds. But my question is this: does that decision, that conditionality, apply to previously awarded multi-year grants? In other words, there are grants that have been awarded that take place, they spend out over a period of time. So my question is, are you intending to retroactively apply that condition?
No.
And I remember Secretary Buttigieg, who I think was probably in this room sitting right there, and he expressed concern as well about additional pressures that would be put on the already most congested airport in the country if we added those slots. This information was not available then, but there was lots of reason for concern. Those slots have since been added, I think early this year. Those additional slots were added to the most congested airport in the country. And I know you put safety first, right? So my question to you, Mr. Secretary, is will you work with us to re-examine that decision? Because the four of us voted against the entire FAA authorization at that time because of our concern about safety. And given all the information that's now available, I hope we will go back to see if that will aggravate an already very difficult problem.
I think it would be appropriate for this body to have a conversation about what is appropriate and what is the capacity that DCA can handle. I think you all should discuss that, no doubt. By the way, there was 1,500. You mentioned there was 80,
15,000.
15,000, 80, but 85 were critically close in that time period.
Yeah.
And so and I take your point on that. We're trying to, at the FAA now, say what else should we see that we're not seeing? Because that should have been seen. That cross traffic should have been stopped. So we're doing that work right now. We're using some AI tools. But also, I think it's my responsibility to talk about the air traffic control system and say that is a foreseeable danger.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to have conversations about safety. And that's how all of us doing our jobs together.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate your efforts on that. And let me just say, I listened carefully to your answer with respect to the additional slots. And I agree it's a conversation we need to have up here. But my question to you, Mr. Secretary, is given your important role, will you engage with us in that discussion and a determination about whether or not we now need to roll back some of those slots?
I would welcome the opportunity to engage with all of you on that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Senators have 7 days to submit any additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We request DOT's responses within 30 days of that, and the subcommittee stands in recess.